I would like to say a huge thank you to Transcontrol and especially Peter Walvis, who helped me transport my dog Maya from Salvador Bahia in Brazil to London, UK in April 2014. So when I first contacted Peter Walvis at Transcontrol, it was in March 2014, and I had explained to him that I needed to travel with my dog quite quickly out of the country to London, and that my dog didn't have a special blood test which proved her vaccine against rabies, which I knew meant she would have to go into quarantine. Therefore, from the first contact, Peter was extremely helpful. He emailed me straight back, he answered all of my calls, and he explained the whole process in lots of detail straight away. So I already felt like I was in really, really safe hands, as it was a really stressful time having to travel with my dog out of Brazil to the UK. So he was extremely helpful, explained everything in detail, and he helped move all of the different paperwork, as it was very complicated to get through all the paperwork to transport an animal out of Brazil and then into the quarantine. So the whole time he was in contact with myself and in contact with the quarantine premises in the UK, making sure that we all were in communication and had all the details needed and necessary for the dog to leave the country in a safe and viable way. So it got to April when I was ready to leave the country, and I was leaving from Salvador to meet him and his team in Rio, where Maya, my dog, would then be transported via KLM Airlines, which was a separate airline to myself, to the UK. So I would also like to add that during that whole process of finding out the quote and having all the bureaucracy and the paperwork sorted, I was asking loads of questions, I was calling up constantly, I was changing my plans, and the whole time Peter was extremely patient. He would still explain all of the things in detail and would always recommend the best way forward, and I was very, very grateful for that. So we got to April and I was ready to leave Brazil. I flew from Salvador in the morning and arrived early in the morning in Rio, where I met Peter himself and the whole of the team. They took me through all the last part of the paperwork, and they really, really reassured me that Maya was going to be fine and that she would travel at this time, and they showed me all of the areas in the cargo lounge where Maya would wait until she would be put onto the flight that evening, which was a separate flight to my own. I was really, really happy with the whole thing. I couldn't have been happier actually. They really made me feel very, very secure in everything that was being done and signed and said. So I was very happy. So I left Maya around 3-4 o'clock in the afternoon. She was going to be flying that evening, so she would have stayed with the rest of the team and they would have looked after her until she flew. And I was flying on a different flight direct to London. I got on my flight all fine, happy in the knowledge that the next day I would arrive in London and I would be able to see my dog in the quarantine premises that day. When I did arrive in London, I switched on my phone and realised I'd had lots and lots of emails from Transcontrol, from Peter. There had been a terrible mistake from the airline. KLM had forgotten to put my dog Maya on their flight. Now, when Peter had realised this, he emailed me, he called me. Unfortunately, my phone was off as I was already boarding my flight. He contacted the quarantine premises, he contacted the airline before I'd got on my flight, he even contacted the police. He was trying every possible way to get in contact with me before I got onto my flight, because Maya, my dog, hadn't been put on hers. Unfortunately, I hadn't looked at my emails, my phone wasn't on, and he had no way of contacting me. Therefore, him and the team stayed up all night. They made sure Maya was fine. The next day, they walked Maya, they fed her, they gave her water. Peter sent me loads of pictures of Maya looking happy and well, and they organised Maya to fly that night on a British Airways flight direct to London. They did everything they possibly could and more. I can't even begin to imagine what they went through. I know that I myself was really upset, very, very stressed. I couldn't believe an airline could make such a mistake, but they really, really reassured me. Once they had a confirmation that Maya was going to be on the flight, they gave me a number so that I could speak to someone myself, to the airline and cargo part, just to confirm that she was going to be on the flight. And they were fine with that. And Maya flew that night, and the next day I went to see her in quarantine and she was absolutely fine. So really, I can't thank Peter enough for having dealt with such a massive mistake by the KLM airline. He kept me calm, he did everything he could, and his team as well, to make sure that Maya, my dog, was happy, that she was tranquil, that she was calm and not stressed before the flight, because obviously it was a very stressful thing. I wasn't there with her. And they made sure that they got her on the next direct flight as fast as possible. They were amazing, and I cannot thank them enough, and I would recommend them 1,000 times over to anyone who wanted to transport their dog from Brazil to the UK.